This is as much of the bonnet that I can strip on the rotisserie. I'm left with the air ducts, and the mounting point for the rotisserie is the air duct and the centre panel. So I can't remove the centre panel. Not properly, unless I just take this off and put it on a bench. I probably can do it, but it's just a bit awkward. So eventually I'm going to require a table to put the bonnet on in any event, and that's mainly so I can do the final seals on the bottom here. These seals here, joining these pieces to the bonnet. Now, I can't do that on the rotisserie. The rotisserie sits a bit too high for that. So I need something that drops the bonnet in its upturned position down to about, probably down to about that level, which will make it a lot easier to stand over it and do all that sealing work. In addition, it would be helpful too if I have it on a table for when I'm looking at repairing these sections and then refitting them and making sure that everything aligns. So there's no intention, or certainly I have no intention of making a separate table. I'm going to use the rotisserie stand itself to form a table. So a little bit like a Swiss Army knife. I've been working on determining the profiles for the rear and the front of the bonnet, and I'm going to use the profiles to sit at the rear behind the louvers, so not right to the edge of the bonnet here, but midway between, and at the front they'll pass through over the headlight openings. So that's where they'll be mounted. This stage I'm not going to use a very wide piece of timber to do that profile. I'm going to use probably two thinner profiles to sit at each end of the bonnet, probably about 20 to 25 mils wide. The thing I've been working on is looking at how much this bonnet curves. Now the string line at the back here, you can probably just see, gives me basically a line from the edge where the wing sits, so that's the lowest point, and it enables me to determine how much rise there is in the bonnet basically from the horizontal, and it works out to be, I'll just look at my figures here, it's at 75 mils rise from the centre of the bonnet to the top of the bulge, and at the front, even though I'm not going to run across the main part of the bulge, which rises quite a lot in the centre there, I'm just forward of that at the front, and once again the rise even there just happens to be 75 mils. What I'll be doing to get the profile for the rear is, when I've got the timber, which I need to just go and buy soon, I'll actually lay the timber against the rear of the bonnet and then basically draw the profile. Now at the front of the bonnet I'm using this profile gauge to basically look at the profile from the side to the centre of the bonnet. I'll mark the centre of the bonnet, both front and rear, so I should have enough length in this profile gauge to go across. bearing in mind I'm going from the headlight aperture in the bonnet, so that's further in from the edge there. So I'll use that to actually determine the profile that I'll use to cut the timber. So this is just the early stages. So I've got to get the profiles correct. I've determined where I'm going to put the mounting points for the bonnet, so how it'll sit on the table or cradle, whatever you like to call it. So it also gives me how high the bonnet is going to sit above the cradle, which I need to determine before I actually look at where I'm going to position the bar along the side. So it's coming along, it's not too bad. Even when I get the profiles cut, obviously I'll still have to do some minor work on shaping it, but certainly it's a good start to the process. Now I've just finished one side of the support structure, this steel beam across, bolted of course to the A-frame. On top of that, when I've got them bolted in both sides, I've only got it clamped up on the other side. This piece of timber goes across and stretches across. So that's the main beam to support the bonnet. There's one at in this case that's where the front of the bonnet will be, and one at the rear. I believe that that's going to be strong enough to hold it. I'm not putting a flat board in here anywhere, so it'll just, at this stage, I'll put one under the nose. In fact, it's not under the front, it's part way back, probably halfway through the headlight sugar scoops, and that will be moulded. Now these pieces of timber just resting on the bottom here, they'll be screwed to that beam and they'll reflect the shape of the bonnet. Now whether I do a complete shape across, I'm not sure yet. I've got enough timber to do that. I may well do that, but those boards, once they're shaped, will screw up under the bonnet to meet the uneven shape of the bonnet. At this stage I've only got two pieces of timber there. I may end up screwing a piece of timber either side of that beam to just give a bit of extra support. Now there's a long way to go. Basically I'm designing it as I go. The beam across here is not centralised in the A-frame, mainly because the bonnet, the weight is at the nose, so where the nose sits on this, it's closer to the A-frame, and you probably can't see the rear in the camera, but that sticks a long way out from the A-frame, so the rear of the bonnet is not as heavy. The weight is towards the front, so the weight is actually over the structure itself, so it's not not going to try and force the whole table to tilt. So the weight would basically be directed down onto the pulleys of not the pulleys, the rollers at the front. So a long way to go yet. These beams of course will be bolted to the steel so that doesn't move. So I'm hoping this will be enough to provide support. I'm not sure whether I'll put some form of foam across the top. I may well do. At the moment that doesn't matter because the metal hasn't been finished in any way, but further down the track, when I've finished the metal, I probably don't want it just sitting on the bare timber, but I'll think about that after I've got it basically constructed. So still a long way to go. It gets awkward trying to bolt, not to bolt, but to drill the bolt holes and try and get them straight. No matter how hard you try, you actually can't keep them aligned properly to the steel, and you always tend to go off a little bit, little bit out of skew on one part causes problems on the other. But I didn't have too much problem with that. It didn't work straight off. Had to re-drill the holes. But apart from that, probably better if I didn't have the remains of the bonnet sitting above me. I sit under there and sort of climb in, climb out. Once the table, of course, is done, the actual rotisserie structure will come off. So then it's just the A-frame and the support structure with the wheels on the bottom. So won't have that problem of something being overhead. Anyway, long way to go, but this stage it seems to be working okay. The height of the table, the height of this, that's 500. The beam itself is 900, so that's not 900, 90. So that's 590. Obviously the bonnet will sit up a little bit higher than that, a little bit higher on the edges, and obviously lower in the middle where the power bulge is. So it works out that when I'm standing next, or it should work out when I'm standing next to the bonnet, I won't have to bend, or certainly won't have to bend too far to actually get into the bottom of the bonnet. It would basically be just a natural reach down to the internals. So hopefully that will work well. Anyway, I've got a lot more to do. I've finally finished the basic supports for the table. These bars are now, wooden bars are in. Well, everything's bolted up, it's nice and tight, nice and solid. What I now have to do is to do the shaped pieces to put or to attach to those wooden beams there. I'll actually screw those on once I've shaped them, but now I've actually got to shape the front and the rear. The front is here and the rear is over there, so it's going to take a little while. This took long enough to try and get that in place, but now I know it's quite solid, and hopefully I can get those other shape pieces onto it, so I can actually put the for a start, just to put the bonnet centre section in the cradle or on the table, as it may be. I've just finished shaping the support for the nose. I've used the profile gauge to get this, and I've actually screwed that onto the support and glued it. And I'm also using the support to provide an area where the nose section will actually sit on it. So I'll just put a shallow dip in there, in the centre there, following the profile at the front. Now, the profile is probably not exact, mainly because of the way I've cut it. But what I intend to do is that when I've done the rear section, which I'm about to profile now and put on, once I've done that, I'll actually put the centre section on the supports and just check the fit. Now, it doesn't have to be an exact fit, it needs to be very close, and the reason for that is I've decided to put some padding on the support section. Not sure what I'll use. I'm thinking of cloth rather than rubber, and the reason for that is that I don't want any movement once it's on there. Now, if it's sitting on a hard surface, it will tend to slide, and I certainly don't want that. And apart from that, I don't want the timber in any way to mark the metal. Now, it shouldn't, but I'm not going to run the risk of that. So this stage I'm thinking of a thick cloth, and what that will do is actually provide some padding, and it will actually stop it from slipping so much. So that's what I'm thinking at this stage. I've got plenty of old cloth lying around in the garage, so it may well be a padded cloth. I'm sure I've got some padded material somewhere. But anyway, I'm not worried about that at this stage. I'll get the rear timber profile done. I'll sit the metal on top of that, see what the fit is like, and I want it close, but as I say, it doesn't have to be exact because it will have padding on there anyway, and the padding will take up any unevenness in the support structure. So anyway, it's getting close. I've used 2 thicknesses of this timber, so it's not just the piece on the outside. There's a piece I've glued to the inside which also sits on the support, so it's quite strong, and there shouldn't be any difficulty with that. Now, I was going to support the bonnet all the way across the centre section, but what I've been doing is checking the rear profile, and what I've found is that on the right hand side, which is where it had a push in the guard in about the centre of the centre section, the corner area, the curved area there, is slightly above the profile of the actual body. So I think that what's happened is when it's been hit, it's actually lifted that slightly. And to check that, the profile of that end and this end is different to that extent. So what I'm going to do is support it over the bulge and down around back where the vents finish, along this section here. Now the profile is the same on either side of the bulge, so I'm fairly confident that won't alter as I start to repair the wing, and obviously I will have to address that corner. So I'm going to make the support basically across the centre and out to the edge of the vents. It's quite a surface area there, so that's plenty of support for this end of the bonnet. The table is now complete. I've got moulded timber on each end. Underneath the rear, in terms of the shape, it goes from there to there, doesn't go back as far as the vents, so it's predominantly under this bracing section, and it probably goes out to about that far, so not too far out. The front, similar, it's halfway through the headlight openings, and it's moulded to take the actual sharp curve of the bonnet at the front end. Now the table, and I'll call it a table even though it doesn't have a flat top, table's to be used for a number of things. To start with, to pull these air ducts out. Secondly, it gives me somewhere to put this bonnet so I can actually strip it down, or the centre section, so I can strip it down. I've got to remove the remaining undercoat from the other side. I'll do that with vinegar, and I've got to actually scrape all this rubbish out of the inside. Now, once I scrape the surface off this, and some of that will be oil or grease, I'll probably get back to paint, I assume. There is paint up the front of the bonnet, just forward of the power bulge, but it'll give me an opportunity to get a nice flat surface so I can actually once again get the vinegar wrap in, and it'll make it easy for me to scrape the surface clean. The other thing I'll use this table for too is to repair the nose section. Now this table has the advantage of being very mobile, so it's able to be turned around the other way, so I can get to the damage on the front of the centre section, where I've actually got to replace sections of that. And ultimately, once I start repairing the wings, I'll use this table to assemble to make sure I've got everything aligned. So it should work out quite well. The other thing is having a movable table. I've got very tight space. I'm using 2 bays to work on the E Type, and I've got another car and another bay at the other end of the garage, so I don't have a lot of room. And this enables me to just push it as far as I can out of the way when I'm not using it. So it's got that advantage. Very easy to move, of course. Very, very light, and I can lock those wheels off. So anyway, it is now complete. I've just put cloth on the top of the moulded sections. I don't know whether I'll put anything thicker than that. I'll wait and see, but at this stage I've got cloth on there. It's held quite securely. I've got this rope through the rear of the bonnet, and it comes through the brace, and it just goes straight down onto a hook at the front there. So it can't push forward, and it has limited ability to push back. Not that I've actually been able to move it easily anyway, because its own weight and the fact of the shape tends to keep it in position. But I thought I'd just put that in as a safety net, just in case I'm working on something and pushing, and all of a sudden everything drops and it drops down in the middle. So anyway, I think it's been worth the effort, and now I can move on and do some more stripping.